Croeso I sianel Blaid Llwyd. Welcome to the Polar Night. Yes, this is a new VN. It's very horror themed. You may have gathered from the opening line there. So it's going to be a little dark, maybe a little tense. We'll see. This is the first build, but I was impressed enough with it to actually bring it quite quickly into the channel. So I'm hoping you'll enjoy it. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it. If you played it, you'll know what's going on. If not, you'll soon find out. Let's start it up. The wolf couldn't see anything through the blizzard. Beyond the windshield was just a thick flurry of white. But then, he didn't have a destination in mind anyway, just away from there. He had one hand pressed tightly to his abdomen, trying to compress the wound there. The other gripped the steering wheel of the snow truck tightly. A mix of adrenaline and extreme cold disguised the pain. He was surprised he even managed to get the snow truck running and driving away from that madness. His eyes glanced at the glove compartment. Maybe he could just throw it out into the snow? Drive away from this?
Seriously? After all that, you're gonna fuck everyone over to save your own skin?
But Wolf ignored him. His companion sitting in the passenger seat. Engaging was pointless. His ears pinned back and fangs bared, partly from anger but mostly from the pain in his belly. And yet shame bubbled within him. How could he think of breaking his promise?
I'm not surprised, to be fair. It's all you ever do.
Again the wolf didn't respond. A flash of agony shot through him, reminding him of his grave wound. He grimaced and cried out, but his cry was followed by an awful sputtering sound. The sputtering continued until the engine fell silent, the vibration of the truck ceasing. The wolf sat there, staring at the dashboard in a mix of bewilderment and accusation, as if he could shame the machine into starting up again. He glanced at the fuel gauge. Empty. How could he have overlooked it? His departure had been hurried. They'd not had the luxury of properly preparing. After an awkward pause, the wolf threw a frustrated tantrum, cursing and slamming his fist against the wheel, kicking the footwell and screaming.
This isn't helping, you know.
The wolf only barely resisted a furious snarl at the other figure, reining in his anger in order to slump forward, head against the wheel and eyes closed. Tears rolled down his muzzle. The journey had lasted maybe 5 minutes at most. There couldn't be more than a few hundred meters from that place. All of that effort and sacrifice, just to fail within walking distance.
It's a first aid kit in the back. You look like you need it.
The voice snapped him back out of his misery. His eyes flicked open, now aware of just how tired he was. How the steering wheel of this utilitarian truck might as well be the fluffiest pillow ever. As his awareness flowed back, the stench of iron in the cabin made him gag. He knew the source. He brought his trembling paw up to his face. Though the redness was hard to make out against the black fabric of his glove, the soaked glistening told him it was saturated with his blood. At first he felt his stomach lurch, but then he realized he wasn't really feeling much pain, at least not as much as he'd expected to feel from such a wound. All the tension and fear he'd felt started to drift off. His wet nose sniffed and the blood scent, his own, didn't register so strongly with him. In fact, everything felt distant, like he was drunk. And God, did he know what drunkenness felt like. He reached into the glove box, his trembling hand brushing that cursed thing to grasp the flare he'd been given. Regardless of anything else, he needed to warn them, to tell them he'd failed. Maybe they'd come for him. The wolf reached his trembling, blood-soaked paw to the door, and after a brief pause, opened it. stumbled out of the cabin, not bothering to close it after him. Something told him there's no point. Bracing himself against the side, he staggered through the knee-high snow, still keeping pressure on his wound, though now it was more of a token act. He couldn't see more than a foot or so in any direction. Instead, he placed a paw against the truck's side, using it to guide him to the back. On reaching the rear doors, he had to pause for a moment. The howl of the blizzard saturated his mind, drowning out his thoughts. He brought the flare up, preparing to activate it. And then, just like that, his weak, trembling hands let it slip from his grasp. The buffeting wind and snow instantly carried it out of his field of vision.
Fuck, no!
He glanced down, dropping to his knees, glanced around frantically as he dug at the snow for the flare. Without it, the others would have no way of knowing his status. He pawed desperately in the thick snow, feeling his ability to move wane as the cold cut through his jacket and trousers and sucked the warmth from his already weakened body. Gazing at the snow, illuminated by the rear headlights of the snow truck, he slowed and stopped, breathing heavily as his blood-soaked hands carved crimson swathes in the snow. He stared at the crimson streaks, realizing he was never going to find the flare.
No!
He threw back his head and let loose a primal, feral lupine howl of rage and despair at the unceasing blizzard. Recovering, he stared in the inky blackness, only slightly penetrated by the taillights. They didn't stretch more than a few meters into the blizzard. He could probably try to return the way he came, but having expunged his rage and frustration, nothing remained. Only emptiness. He could have made the journey back, even if he wanted to. He turned, half crawling back towards the rear doors of the truck and the only shelter around. The cold barely registered anymore. He felt like his legs were moving on automatic. He pawed clumsily for the door handles. He missed them several times, his vision feeling oddly blurred. Was it the cold? The snow buffeting his face? Finally his paws reached the handles and gripped them, yanking them open. The cargo compartment was almost entirely empty. They'd not had time to stock it. He turned to gaze back where he'd come from, nothing visible beyond a few feet in the darkness and the thick blizzard. He scanned the glowing crimson of the return flare. There was nothing. He'd agreed to wait for 2 hours before popping flares to guide him back. Far too long. Far too late. With Herculean effort, he hauled himself up out of the snow, mostly dragging his body inside the cargo compartment. He turned, reaching for the doors once again and pulling them shut. Just like that, the blizzard dropped from the ear-shattering howl to a dull roar. As the wolf regained his bearings, the pain in his belly made him cry out, bringing tears to his eyes. His legs faltered, leaving him stumbling back. The back of his legs hit a box on the floor and he toppled. The impact knocked any remaining breath out of him and left him paralysed. His pain cry came out as a strangled gargle. His eyes closed as pain flooded him. He wanted to scream in pain, but he simply didn't have the breath or the energy to do so. Was this it? Was this the end? Alone in the back of a snow utility vehicle in the remotest place on Earth, leading out? Alone. So utterly alone. The pain dissipated, concentrating around his wound, though even that didn't hurt so much anymore. He didn't know how long he lay there. The thoughts of his ordeal were background noise, like the sound of the blizzard outside. More tears rolled idly down his cheeks. They'd placed their trust in him. The last face he saw, begging him to at least try.
Connor, I need to hear you say the words.
He struggled to open his eyes again. All he wanted was to sleep, maybe to wake up again safe and sound, but at this point he didn't much care about that anymore.
I need to hear you say it, Connor. What you should have said to me and Mum before you abandoned us.
The usual smug snide of his companion was absent, replaced with bitterness. Connor couldn't feel it, but tears ran freely down the sides of his face into his hair. He couldn't meet his eyes. He could feel that sad yet accusing gaze burning into him. That he used such a thing against him at this, his final moment, was of no surprise. For it still hurt.
Connor. Please.
The dying wolf had no more anger left. Images of them, his brother, his mother, created an ache so deep, so all-encompassing that what little agony he could still feel in his wound seemed trivial. He closed his eyes again. What little strength he had left abandoned him as he receded, his consciousness a flickering light in the encroaching dark. His final words, his final thoughts, were drenched in a deep, abiding sense of regret.
I'm so sorry.
He took a raspy, shallow breath. His entire body went limp, the grimace of misery and pain slowly easing as his body and mind shut down.
Garrett.
Thursday. Clutching the 3 packs of cigarettes, I ambled over to the counter, while the bored-looking bull cashier watched me. I slapped the 3 packs of cigarettes onto the counter. "Edel Duville?" I gave him a blank look. I didn't speak Norwegian, which is what I assumed he'd just spoken. He rolled his eyes, likely dealing with non-speakers on a frequent basis. "Will that be all?" He enunciated clearly in a show of irritation, as though I were deaf. Starting the urge to tell him to stick his attitude, I gave him a nod. He told me the cost. My ear twitched. Much cheaper than Britain. Maybe another couple of packs? I was tempted to grab an armful, given how cheap tobacco was here, and also maybe to fuck with him a bit, but I decided against it. I didn't want to take the piss. Or to have him kick me out, smokeless. I pulled a wad of Norwegian kroner out of my pocket and rifled through them before separating a few crisp notes and placing them before the cashier. "Cheers, pal." I gave him a brief smile and nod, but he didn't return it. Simply handed me my change. I slipped them into my pocket before turning awkwardly, my large backpack making it hard to manoeuvre through the slightly cramped store. Hefting my pack, I turned, carefully to avoid sweeping the tightly packed shelves of the contents of my backpack, and marched to the door. I pulled my open pack of smokes from my pocket, fumbling for my lighter in the other pocket. My prized possession. Even before I started smoking, this is the only thing I have of my granddad, an Ellison Sports Elite. He used it in the Second World War, told me it never once failed to light. Using my lips, I pull a smoke from the pack, stuffing it back in my pocket as I bring up my lighter, shielding it using my other hand from the frigid wind. Immediately it caught. The tip of my smoke started to glow and I inhaled. The welcome, calming rush of nicotine floods into me. After a full breath, I flick the lighter closed, tilted my head back, and after a moment, exhale. The smoke mixes with a sub-zero wind and turns into a billowing cloud, hot breath and fumes mix in frigid air. At this time of year, Longyearbyen could be pretty much summarised as dark and cold. As my boots crunched the snow, I realised that for all we Scots like to whinge about our weather, this place was truly something else. And yet I had to admit, sullen cashier notwithstanding, I liked it. I liked the cold, the snow, the quiet. Only a couple of thousand people lived here, and yet it didn't come across as a ghost town. Just peaceful. Not like Glasgow. I was fond of my hometown, but could also be a madhouse at all times of the day. It was the only place I knew that had a McDonald's that needed bouncers because of the nutters who came out at night. Shoving my hand in my pockets, I keep the smoke set between my lips, drawing on it occasionally. Manipulating a cigarette with my thick gloves is pretty hard, and the air is far too cold to be without gloves. Gifts from Mum. She bought me my ensemble gear, spending a fortune on top of the money she'd thrown at this expedition. The meeting spot was just up the road, maybe a 10-minute walk. For all the thick warm gear, I was still feeling the chill. Longyearbyen, the largest settlement on Svalbard, a Norwegian archipelago near the Arctic. The northernmost settlement on Earth. On the other side of the road, walking further into town, a pair of men were chatting in Norwegian. They both had rifles slung about their shoulders. A pretty crazy feature of Svalbard is that residents are required to have firearms if they leave the settlement into the wilderness, for protection from polar bears. Although they can't carry loaded firearms within the settlement itself, it's still odd for me to see guns being carried in the open. They glance over at me and I avert my gaze. I hear mumbling in a language I don't understand, likely Norwegian. I probably look like a tourist or something. I tug my dark fringe down a little. Fortunately, my left eye is on the opposite side to them. By the time I arrive outside the cafe, my smoke is almost finished. I glance inside the window, try and see if anyone is there. It's deserted apart from a single solitary figure. A possum guy sitting by himself at a table with a cup in front of him. Seems to be absorbed in a book. No idea if he's a local or not, but given this is where we're supposed to meet and the lack of anyone else, I figure it's a good bet he might be here for the same reason I am. I guess it's good it's just the one guy. If I'd stumbled upon a whole group, I might have lost my nerve at so many new faces. The final draw of my smoke, I stub it out on the bin, ensuring I mix a bit of the snow at the end to ensure it's properly doused, then push the door open. The coziness of the place hits me immediately, like I just slipped into a warm bath. Despite the late hour, the place still looks open. Chairs are neatly set against clean tables, a single staff member behind the counter bustling away. Apart from generic background music, which these places tend to play, it's totally quiet. The possum doesn't react to my entrance, even though the guy behind the counter gives me a smile and a nod. He must be really into that book. I make my way towards his table. When I arrive, my shadow passes over him. Hey. He jumps, glancing up at me. He really must have been engrossed. When his eyes meet mine, instead of smiling, it looks like I just pulled a gun on him. Hi. I swallow hard, as used to odd looks and awkward first impressions on account of my eye. Wasn't used to people looking like I was brandishing a butcher knife. Are you here for the Sylvia? He gives me a wide-eyed stare of fright for a moment before relaxing. Oh yeah, sorry, just surprised me is all. He gestured to a seat opposite him at the table. I gratefully slipped my pack off, set it on the floor by the chair and sat down, sighing as I did. Oh, where'd you travel from? He closed his book and slipped it below the table into a pack sitting by him. Scotland, still not shaken off the journey. 20 goddamn hours. Ha, Vancouver, 30 hours. He gives me a cheeky grin. Wow, this guy's giving me whiplash, from don't kill me to sass in seconds. I'm Stefan Golubev, pleased to meet you. He extended a hand and I yanked off a glove before accepting it. LeGarrette Reed, likewise. I want a coffee. It's really good, sir. Easily one of the best I've had. Sure. He turned around and waved at the barista. Same again, please. The barista gave a thumbs up and started preparing a coffee. He turns back to me with an excited grin. It's honestly amazing, none of that Robusta crap. Aye? I gave him what I hoped was an interested look. I know fuck all about coffee. I'm more of a tea person, to be honest, but I figured it'd be easier to just go with it. Yeah, which is a pity. Longyearbyen is pretty dull and cold. Thought my tail was going to freeze off. I don't know, I like the cold. Wish I had more time to sightsee. To each their own. He gazed at me with those big, excited eyes. I admit he did have a somewhat infectious smile, though he didn't speak, instead watching me expectantly. I remember the book he'd been reading when I entered, the one he'd been so engrossed in. So, what were you reading? Oh, this? He reached beside him and pulls the book out, which, now I can see it properly, is a very battered paperback. It's Genetic Lottery by Rupert Gadala. Never heard of it. I shake my head, glad he's up for filling the silence. It's about how many species ended up gaining sapiens, all roughly around the same era, independently and across the globe. You ever hear about the Mosaic event? It was when... It didn't even give me time to answer, so my jaw just hung slightly open while I tried to maintain eye contact and nod. I guess he's enthusiastic. Very enthusiastic. Christ on a bike. He really isn't going to stop. Wait, did he say otherworldly? I made no effort at all to hide my slack jaw and staring gaze. He doesn't care. Or at least he doesn't notice. My hand moved to my pocket for my cigarette, looking opening to take a smoke break before he started talking about the Rothschilds. I jumped as the door opened, inviting a burst of icy air. I turned to look, seeing a pair of young Caprine women shuffling through the door. A third figure, a lapping guy, followed, making a loud purr as he entered. Oh, thank Christ, some warmth. All three looked familiar in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on, especially the hair guy. I could swear I'd seen him before. The Caprine girl with the blue jacket stamped her feet to dislodge the snow in her boots, while the one with the beanie scanned the room for locking eyes with me. I cringed at the unblinking gaze, feeling like she was reading my mind or something. My hand automatically moved to my fringe, pulling my dark hair to ensure it obscured my left eye. Her companion also glanced around for spottiness. She gave a warm grin and happily waved. Just as the three arrived at our table, the barista swooped in to place my coffee before me. I gave them a grateful smile as the three new arrivals pulled up chairs to sit around our table. Hello guys, can I get you anything? The barista spoke perfect English, albeit with a Norwegian accent. At least I thought so. I was useless at recognising specific accents that aren't from the UK. Oh, a latte would be nice. Tabby? The goat lass in the blue jacket spoke with an American accent. Again, not sure where precisely, but vague enough that I can't place it. The younger girl had her shoulders hunched and her hands in her pockets. She gave a non-committal shrug. Make that 2 lattes, please. Thank you. Make mine a cappuccino, would you? He had a clear Irish accent. He tugged off his gloves and rubbed his hands, blowing them for warmth. The barista moved off to make them their drinks. I take it you two are here for the Sylvia? The blue-jacketed girl smiled, leaning forward and hugging herself to warm up. Immediately the beanie-wearing girl pulls out her phone and focuses on it, ignoring the rest of us. Yeah, we're here for the Sylvia. I'm Garrett Reed. I'm Stefan Goribev. Pleased to meet you. The lap-hand guy sat next to me, drawing close and rubbing his arms for warmth. I'm Arran Marsh. Pleased to meet you. He gave a grin and a small wave while going back to blowing into his hands. Nice to meet you, fellas. I'm Gail Waters, and this chatty social butterfly is my sister, Tabby. I want to introduce yourself. She nudged her sister, who just scowled and muttered without looking up from her phone. Hi. Me and Stefan exchanged a look, but Gail just laughed. Yeah, she takes time to warm up to people. No shit, I thought. Judging by the way she was thumbing the screen, she was scrolling something continuously. Probably some social media shite like Barker. God, I could be such an old fart sometimes. Holy stuff, he has decent heating. Got to bring ear warmers. Arran complained, taking his ears in his hands and rubbing them, presumably to get some warmth into them. What do you expect for this far north? Don't you have a hood? Gail chuckles and smirks, though she's rubbing it own ears a little. Yeah. He pouted. Lappians were really finicky about anything touching or covering their ears. I guess it made sense for people with such sensitive hearing. Wolves like me had sensitive hearing, nowhere good as Lappians, and even we didn't really like stuff covering our ears when we could help it. It was uncomfortable, not quite as bad as being underwater, but similar in sensation. Continuous rubbing of the fabric of a hood could feel deafening. Most headwear, like tabbies, had holes for years, which was fine. But in freezing weather like this, leaving your ears exposed to the wind chill was a great way to get frostnip. Do you guys know each other? He motioned between Gale and Arran. Oh no, we met about an hour ago, decided to stick together since we're all going together anyway. So what do you guys do? Gale directed at me and Stefan, so I had to get my introduction in first before Stefan could get started. Oh, I'm a Sparky, nothing interesting. When I got a bunch of blank looks and raised eyebrows, I added, electrician. Alright, is that what you call it where you're from? That's the nickname we use. I'm so used to calling it that I forget how it must sound. I gave a small laugh, cringing inwards at the 4 sets of eyes now set on me. Without realising, my paw tugged at my fringe, ensuring it covered my eye. That sounds cool. You like the guy people call fix their fuse box? Pretty much. Some on industrial sites, but mostly homes. What happened to your eye? I froze. Tabby had stopped fiddling with her phone for a moment to gaze me directly in the eye, a look of morbid curiosity on her face. Tabby, you don't just demand people explain stuff like that. I felt my stomach clench, instinctively tugging at my fringe. Had she seen through, or correctly assumed my fringe was hiding my left eye? Judging from Arran and Stefan's reactions, they'd clearly been thinking the same thing. They just evidently had more tact. Why not? I'm just curious. As much as Gale tried, I could see the others were all now staring at me with even more rapt attention. Gale offered a chagrined look. You don't have to explain anything. No, it's fine. It's like there's much to say. I had an accident. Gale smiled apologetically and gave her sister a there, satisfied sort of look. Though from Tabby's expression, she's evidently not satisfied. She mostly did not press the issue and went back to her phone. So, how about you, Gale? What do you do? I seized the opportunity to move the focus away from me. Oh, me? Oh, I'm not that interesting, to be honest. Just finished my first full year as a registered nurse. Oh, seriously? Bet that's been a stressful time. Oh, it was. But finally getting out of university and being able to work with patients is just so satisfying. Long hours, but I feel like I'm making a difference, you know? What about you, Stefan? Me? It looked more than a little uncomfortable. I work retail. Nothing wrong with that. Where do you work? I took a sip of my coffee. While the warmth and scent was inviting, I could never really get on with the taste. I only typically drank it if I needed to wake up. I was glad the conversation had turned away from me. I tuned up the conversation a little, glancing from one person to the other. It seemed nice enough. Even Tabby had stopped fiddling with her phone to observe, though she didn't say anything. With another sip, I turned back into the conversation. How about you, Arran? The hare was about to speak when the barista arrived with a tray carrying their drinks. Oh, thank you kindly. He beamed at the barista, flashing his pearly white teeth. No sooner had his cup been placed before him than he took it up and sipped, eyes closed with a satisfied Oh, I hit a spot. Oh, I'm a student, studying psychology. He looked a little bashful as he added, and give her pizzas in the evenings to make some scratch. Neat, you ever get to eat lots of pizza then? The words deliver pizzas made Stefan's eyes light up. Well, sometimes. We get pizzas that cancel the wrong order, but as much as I like pizza, even I have my limits. Besides, I need to watch my figure. He gave me a sharp elbow to the ribs and a wink. I nearly choked on my coffee. Not that I wasn't flattered, but... What about you, Tabby? You in college? Stefan asked between gulps of his coffee. Yep. She said in a sullen voice, not even looking up. After a few seconds of not elaborating, Stefan, Arran and myself all exchanged glances, while Gail simply gave an embarrassed smile. At least try to be friendly. We're going to be travelling together for a couple of weeks. Tabby, meanwhile, was utterly unmoved by the conversation, slumped down in a chair with her coffee untouched. I'm not here to make friends. I don't even want to be here. You're the one obsessed with finding Mom. Just like that, it was as the freezing air of the outside blew over us. Even Stefan's bouncy energy vanished. Even if I thought she was being a brat, she did remind us why we were going on this expedition. It wasn't a pleasure cruise. We were going to find the Arran. And her crew. Or what was left of them. The sound of the door opening again shook us all from our private musings. Loud clomping heavy hooves on wood echoed through the room as the figure swept through the door. Holy moly! Stefan muttered under his breath, eyes wide with alarm. Oh, God. Damn. Arran agreed, though his expression was decidedly more pleased. The equine who entered was huge, easily pushing 6.5 feet tall. His snappy-looking gear did little conceal a powerful build. He held himself ramrod straight, moving with a casual grace towards us with each hoof step vibrating through my legs. Good evening. Are you the group waiting to board the Sylvia? His voice was rich and deep as he gazed at us with eyes that felt like they could see right through us. His accent was odd. It was received pronunciation, a very cut glass, yet there was an aspect to it I couldn't place. Middle Eastern, perhaps? Again, my ability to spot accents was pretty crap, but everything about him, clothes, accent, even the way he held himself, screamed class, presence, and likely loaded as fuck. Oh, hello, you must be Sharif? Indeed, Sharif Abdi. Pleased to meet you all. I shall be in charge of the expedition. Would you care for... Arran stammered like he'd just been approached by his school crush. Coffee? I am afraid not. I have come to collect you all. The Sylvia is ready to board and we must not delay. His expression never changed, those piercing eyes settling on the hair. His bashful look quickly changed to an unsettled one under his intense gaze. Without a word, Tabby pushed back from the table with a loud wooden squeak of chair legs on wood and started moving toward the door. Gail blinked, mouth open as though to call after her, but seemingly decided against it, simply watching her retreating back. Did you even finish your coffee? I summoned the barista over to settle the bill. He quickly approached, hands clasped before him with a wide, friendly smile. Everything okay? Enjoy your coffees? Yeah, thanks. Stefan recovered of being stunned by Sharif's entrance. We all started to dig into our pockets for cash. Here you go. With casual ease, Sharif slid a few notes from his coat pocket and handed them to the barista. Keep the change. We all gave him a mix of grateful and surprised looks, but did not meet our eyes, simply turned and strode toward the door, where Tabby was waiting, still glued to her phone. Thanks? Sharif did not react, opening the door back out into the perishing cold. Tabby followed after, not even glancing back. He's pretty intense. He's pretty stuck up. He's pretty presumptuous. He's pretty. As we gathered up our stuff, I felt a twinge in my left eye. I froze for a moment. Please, not now. The twinge could either turn into an annoying ache with a feeling of sand under my eyelid. That was the most likely outcome. The other was much less pleasant. Yeah. My left eye clamped shut in response to the pain. What's wrong? Gail sounded concerned, but I glanced around desperately for a restroom. Spotting the signs of the toilets, I gave them a "be right back" and quick walk towards them. I could sense their confusion and alarm, but I didn't care right now. Tears were already starting to stream from my eyes with the pain. Once I was in the bathroom, I fished in my jacket pocket for the bottles I kept on me at all times. Diclofenac and proximeticaine eye drops. In this instance, the diclofenac wouldn't be strong or fast-acting enough. My practiced hand identified the correct bottle from touch alone. I pulled out the proxymetacane. Like I'd done a million times before, I unscrewed the top and sat on the rim of the sink, quickly washing my hands. The pain was unimaginable, like an eyeful of sand mixed with a red-hot knife through my eyeball. My hands were trembling now, my face aching from the instinctive scrunching of my face to shut my eye muscle wet from the tears. My eyes were in full-blown damage control, flooding themselves to flush out the irritants he believed was there. Taking the bottle, I tilted my head back, used my other hand to force my left eye open, with great difficulty, and quickly squeezed. One drop. Instantly a cool and soothing wave of relief banished the worst of the agony. A second drop and the sandy feeling dissipated. Straight away my face relaxed and my muscles no longer instinctively tried to keep my eyelids shut. As I hunched over the sink, my breath escaped in one long heavy sigh. Keeping my eye closed, I allowed the medicine to do its work. I screwed the lid back on the bottle and slipped it back in my pocket. Leaning over the sink, a mix of tears and the drops leaked from my closed eye, running down my nose. Fuck, my face really hurt. That was a really bad one. Normally these attacks tend to come on more gradually, giving me time to get the diclo drops in before it becomes excruciating. But every so often I get ones like this. He called them thunderclaps, like the headache, the ones my brother used to have. My GP had made it clear to me the proxies were emergencies only, that overuse could further damage my eye. But with these thunderclaps, I could be useless for half an hour in unrelenting agony while waiting for the diclo to kick in. Besides, I was completely blind in my left eye. How much more damage could I do? The only reason I hadn't had the fucking thing removed was the idea of getting it cut out with surgery. Even now, primed as I was with resentment, the idea of having my blind natural eye removed entirely filled me with dread. With the pain gone, for now, I straightened up. Gazing at my reflection, I regarded my ruined left eye. The milky white cataract was a constant reminder to others of my disfigurement, as if the scar wasn't enough. "Garrett, you okay in there?" There was a gentle tap at the door. He sounded pretty concerned. Remembering the way I dashed off, I must have looked a proper sight. Yeah, sorry." I quickly wiped my face and fixed my facial fluff. The door creaked open and I saw his worried eyes peeking around the side. "You sure? What happened?" Seeing I was okay, mostly, he opened the door and stepped inside. Stefan followed closely behind, also looking worried. "My eye." I gave a hollow laugh in an attempt to lighten the situation. I get these painful attacks. That was a pretty bad one, even by my standards. I'm okay now, though. I patted my pocket. I have lots of eye drops to keep me going. Arran and Stefan exchanged looks before smiling and nodding. "As long as you're sure, dude." Stefan brightened, though he still had a sympathetic look. I cringed as both of them were now staring directly at my damaged eye. I tried to laugh it off, turning my head to conceal it in a casual way as I could, tugging my fringe to cover it once again. "Seriously, I'm okay. I didn't mean to scare you guys." The pair gave me a searching look, but they finally seemed to relax. "Okay, if you're sure." Arran placed a hand on my shoulder. "If you're up for it, we should get going then." He and Stefan both stood aside to let me pass, only to face an anxious-looking Gale. "Oh, Garrett, are you all right?" "Really, I'm okay," I insisted, giving her what I hoped was a reassuring smile. I noticed she was holding my backpack and gloves. "Honestly, it happens. Just something I live with. I didn't mean to scare you." I assured her, grateful for accepting my belongings from her. She gave me a smile and waited for me to put my gloves back on before handing me my pack. "I thought you were going to throw up or something." Once my pack was back on, we made our way to the door. Sharif and Tabia were both waiting and looking pretty pissed.
"Where were you?"
Tabby looked like she was about to launch into a diatribe, but Gale cut her off. "Enough, Tabby." The first time I saw Gale flash a genuinely angry look. Tabby opened her mouth to speak, but surprisingly, Gale's glare was enough to make her shut up. "If we are all ready." Sharitan even tried to hide the irritation in his voice. the flourish of his arm, we all start tromping through the snow in the direction of Longyearbyen harbour. For a while we march in awkward silence. The embers camaraderie we'd kindled in our coffees mostly snuffed out. I normally didn't mind walking in silence around others, but given the awkward tension in the air, right now I'd give anything to be somewhere else. I pray to God the voyage wouldn't be like this. With my nerves very much jangled, my hand automatically reached for my smokes. I yanked a cig from the pack with my teeth and reached in my other pocket for my lighter. As I flicked it and drew, I noticed Stefan was watching me intently. I clicked my lighter shut and patted my pocket, holding my smokes. "I want one?" "Oh no, thank you. I was just looking at your lighter." I raised one eyebrow. "Oh, what about it?" "Is it an Ellison?" My smoke brooded in my mouth, very nearly slipping out as I gave him a dumbfounded look. "You know your stuff." I admitted, utterly amazed. He gave me a cheeky grin, pleased by my astounded reaction. "I collected them when I was younger. I've had that one, but I recognise it from old catalogues." His smug grin was replaced by a more longing look. "Could I see it? Just for a sec." I noticed we'd fallen a good few feet behind the others. Yes, it was good that Sharif and Tabby didn't bitch at us for holding them back. Besides, there's much more at ease talking to one person than 5. I hesitated for a moment with the lighter. Placing it into the hands of a stranger made me anxious. Then I slowly placed it in his outstretched hand. He gave me a grateful smile, then pulled off both of his gloves and tucked them under his arm so he could inspect it more easily. He turned it over in his hands, running a single finger down the very faded embossed design on its face before flicking it open. "Oh, may I?" He gave me a look that was more of a pleading one than curiosity. I nodded, kind of taken aback by his fascination. When it sparked into life, first time naturally, he gazed into the flame with a look of awe. He actually stopped in his tracks for a moment, transfixed. I stopped too, watching with a growing sense of bewilderment. I tentatively reached out and snapped the lid shut, snuffing the flame before pulling it from his hands. He blinked, seemingly snapping out of a trance. "Oh, sorry. It's just such a pretty lighter. Well preserved and maintained too." "Thanks. Belonged to my grandpa. He got it during the Second World War. Never once failed him or refused to light." "Damn, it's in great condition, all things considered. Bet your gramps had stories to tell." My tail, very much not by my will, began to sway as my mood brightened. It was kind of annoying that as canids and lupines had such obvious tells of our moods. Other people found it cute and endearing, even though we often couldn't help it. I don't remember too much about his stories. Never really spoke much about the war, except complaining about how much his squad kept stealing his smokes. He died when I was pretty young. Actually, this belonged to my brother before I got it. "Oh man, sorry to hear that. Still, it's awesome you got such a memento. A little piece of history, you know." My tail swayed more vigorously and I grinned. Oddball he may be, but I liked him. Either Gale or Arran had slowed to intercept us or had been walking faster than I thought. The player clustered with us, Gale and Arran a few steps ahead while Stefan and I walked side by side. "I was meaning to ask." Gale gave me a concerned look. "Do you get those painful episodes with your eye often?" I swallowed and felt a pang in my chest. Again with my eye. Took another draw from my smoke, giving myself a moment to consider. "Not that often, no. Usually it isn't that bad, and I use my eye drops anyway, which typically stops it." I took another long draw before adding, "Cold weather makes it worse. I brought a shitload of eye drops with me." "Oh, I'm glad. It didn't look like a fun time," she said with sympathetic understatement. "Must have been quite the accident to do that to your face." Perhaps it's the presumptuous way he phrased it, or my growing impatience with his subject. Whatever it was, my limbs tightened and my fur bristled. My slowly swaying tail paused and raised, curling upwards. Before I could stop myself, my lip quivered, exposing a single fan while my chest vibrated with a soft growl. Arran's tone was sympathetic. I didn't care. I was shutting this shit down right now. Both Gale and Stefan shot him exasperated looks. A sharp, acrid scent of burnt lemons hit my nostrils, the scent of fear and alarm. It must have really hurt. Stefan and Gale gave him withering looks.
A smooth save.
I thought Tabby was tactless. The scent invaded my nose was quickly joined by two other similar but distinct ones. Gale and Stefan were clearly also alarmed by my reaction. Tipping my smoke glow brightly as I inhaled deeply, closing my eyes and settling myself. Prickle of my neck first settling and my lips covering my fangs once more helped diffuse the fearful reaction from the others. As the anger subsided, guilt and shame took its place. My reaction was, in hindsight, over the top, and I really didn't want to add to the awkwardness that already marred our first impressions. Don't worry about it, I get that a lot. They each gave me relieved looks. Still, I wanted more than anything to change the subject. Gale, did Tabby mention you're looking for your mum? I wanted very much to get off the topic. Maybe digging at someone else's wound would suffice. Oh yes, our mom, Emma Waters. She's the ship's doctor. Main reason I decided to go into nursing, actually. Oh cool, did you ever mention Alex at all? Alexander Golubov? His face shone with excitement. Oh yeah, a cook, isn't he? He told me stories about him, quite a character. That's my bro. Stefan beamed widely. I learned how to cook from him. Can't wait to introduce you. His goulash is to die for. It took a second for me to catch the last part. Introduce? Wait, you still think they're alive? Arran spoke my thoughts aloud. Of course, just wait till you meet Alex. He's the best storyteller and a cook. Oh man, one time he made the best honey roasted. Arran had a clear look of confusion. When he met my eyes, we both raised a brow. Gale, on the other hand, listened intently, smiling and nodding along like he wasn't mad. Both of them knew the Arran had been missing for 2 years. Right? The IRV Arran. An enormous Arctic research vessel, tasked with studying Greenland glaciers. The ship that vanished without a trace 2 years ago. The ship my older brother served aboard. Cherie's letter came out of the blue, a few months after the search was called off. I remember my mum screaming, the first display of emotion she'd had in months. I sprinted down the stairs, alarmed to find her clutching the letter with tears in her eyes, yet an excited grin. Initially I was sceptical. We'd received so many letters since its disappearance. Well-wishers mostly, for a shocking amount of hucksters offering psychic help or private search opportunities. This one was different. Sharif actually had a loved one on board, and we recognised him from news reports and interviews. But Sharif had failed to convince international surf efforts to resume. Instead, he would be privately funding a voyage. He couldn't afford to fund it entirely, so he needed help. And so he made the offer that any family member who wanted to contribute to funding the search could participate if they could. Mum obviously leapt at the chance. Despite my misgivings and protests, she took out a substantial loan on top of the cost to get me here, one she'd be repaying for years to come. So what about you guys? What are you bringing home? His voice shook me out of my thoughts. Bringing home probably had very different connotations to them compared to me, and likely Arran too, judging by his expression. Yeah, my brother, Connor. He was a mechanic. Oh, funny you should say that. Tabby is studying mechanics. Gale raised her voice a little, loud enough for Tabby to hear a good few paces ahead of us. Unsurprisingly, she didn't respond, leading Gale to give the back of her head a frustrated look. What about you, Arran? My sister, Carrie. She was the navigator. He mumbled, barely audible. His confusion was replaced with an extremely uncomfortable look. Oh, of course. Carrie Marsh. You look a lot like her, you know. Gale gave him a cheery smile, but I could see he was uncomfortable. The image of the Arran's crew was seared into my mind. The weeks and months following his disappearance were filled with news reports and interviews with sobbing family members. Serious-looking BBC journalists grilling ministers and rescue workers, while photos of smiling, happy Arran crew members are displayed. I remember the pretty young napping navigator. Now it made sense why I recognised him when I first saw him. The resemblance was uncanny. Oh, you don't say. Yeah, she's very pretty. I can't wait to meet her. I bet she has a tale to tell. I felt my stomach clench, and this time I avoided looking at Arran. There was no mockery in her tone. She was serious. She thought they were still alive. I felt a vibration in my pocket. I was grateful for a chance to momentarily tune out the conversation. Pulled my phone out, seeing I had a new message. "Hi Pet, you arrive okay?" It was Mum. My history had 7 messages from her, all stuff I'd missed owing to the somewhat unreliable signal out here. All some variation of, "Have you arrived yet?" or "You're on the plane." I typed back, "I'm okay, in Svalbard. Talk to you later about aboard ship." Go slip my phone back into my pocket. I need to remember to send her a message before we departed. Well, Sylvia had satellite internet and phones we could use to contact the mainland. We'd been warned about its unreliability. Wouldn't want to lose contact and have a worry. So I tuned back into the conversation. I realised we'd arrived at the harbour. Before us was the MV Sylvia. I knew it was chartered of just 8 of us, but for some reason I expected it to be bigger. It didn't look much from here. A top deck and main deck, and presumably a lower deck. It looked more like a tourist ship than a search and rescue vessel. Still, I'd come this far. In for a penny. Waiting for us at the boarding ramp were 3 figures. A shark girl who was chatting idly with the other 2. She seemed quite cheerful. Voice carried over to us as we approached, light and enthusiastic. When she spotted us, she immediately grinned and waved, beckoning us. Then there's the tigress, who, upon our approach, gave us a piercing stare. Not hostile as such, more analysing. When she locked eyes with me, she gave me a searching look before cracking a small smile. And the final figure was a huge guy, Servine, who, while not as tall as Sharif, was much more muscular. His deep, booming voice echoed across the quiet dogs. He laughed heartily at something June had said. Sharif strode ahead of our group with long strides and the confidence in his form. Smooth extended a hand to the shark girl, towering over her. Without missing a beat, she beamed and accepted his handshake, saying something I couldn't quite hear from my position. He turned, facing us all as our group arrived. Snag and Tigress shuffled around as we formed a semicircle around Sharif and the shark class. "I may have your attention, please." "Allow me to introduce myself. I am Sharif Abdi. I am responsible for this expedition as its principal financier. But we are all here for the same reason, to find our loved ones or their fate." There are a few uncertain glances amongst our group, a few looks of grim determination. Once you are all on board and settled in your cabins, we will review the itinerary and how our search will be conducted. This is June. She is the ship's liaison for the voyage and will tend to your needs and answer your questions when the captain and the bridge officers are unavailable. "Hello everyone, pleased to meet you." She waved at us with a cheerful grin. "I will meet you all in the lounge at 11:30 p.m. Please be punctual." Without waiting for a response, he gave June a curt nod and strode up the ramp onto the deck before disappearing inside. "Well, if you'd all kindly follow me." She beckoned to us in our motley group. After a few mutual glances, we gathered our bags and cases and moved towards the boarding ramp. I paused at the foot of the ramp, drawing on my cigarette again. Gazing up the ramp gave me a sudden bound of anxiety. This was it, point of no return. With a final draw before flicking away the butt, I sighed and started my way up onto the Sylvia. As folks filed into the door of the ship's interior, June bobbed her head at each person as if making a mental head count. She turned to look back to me, and grinned and waved. I grinned stupidly and returned the wave. Her bright, cheery expression just seemed to help melt away the knot of anxiety in my chest. At least until I felt a huge hand on my shoulder. "Rusty, you wasn't in that yesterday, Rangonka?" I turned and saw a wall that hadn't been there before. A wall wearing a warm winter jacket. Slowly my eyes travelled upwards till I saw a stern-looking face gazing down at me. The bull spoke with what sounded like a Russian accent. Even by Bovard standards, this guy was fucking gargantua. My jaw flapped open a few times as I tried to get words out. Evening, Joseph. Finishing your rounds?" She bounded up behind us. I cringed as I realised she'd been waving to this guy, not me. Yes, just wanted to know if I could have a light. He never took his eyes off me. He didn't seem to be trying to intimidate me. He just seemed very intense. And a guy his size didn't need to try to be intimidating. Of course, no problem. I reached inside my pocket and produced my lighter. From somewhere on his vast bulk, he produced a rolled cigarette, placed it between his lips and leaned down for me to light it. His nostrils flared as he inhaled, the tip of his cigarette glowing as it caught. Spasibo. He inhaled, then let out a massive cloud of smoke and condensation from the bitterly cold air. Mine broke. I won't get a chance to replace it for a while. I felt a hand tugging on my sleeve. Let's go. Sorry, I don't think I caught your name. Oh, I'm Garrett. Pleased to meet you both. June Cavering, just in case you missed it. And this is... Joseph, bosun. Automatically extended a hand which June shook with enthusiasm. When I offered to Joseph, he also accepted. I tried to think about how his hand almost engulfed mine.
Come on then, let's get you settled. You'll see looking forward to taking a load off.
I gave Joseph a polite smile and nod as June led me off towards the ship's superstructure.
Oh, don't mind him. Joseph is a sweetheart. A bit quiet, but nice.
She led me through the door where the others had entered. Immediately I was hit with the comforting warmth of the ship's heated interior. An involuntary shudder went through me, as if my body was expelling the chill from my bones. She closed the door behind me. The soft whistling of the wind abruptly stopped and was replaced with soft piano music. We were in a lounge of some sort. A well-stocked bar, complete with stools, stood to one end, with a comfy-looking sofa nestled against the outer wall. On the other side was a large dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows, giving would-be diners a good view out to the front of the ship.
Is this the Explorers Club? Pretty neat, huh?
Given the nature of this voyage, I almost expected a Spartan, grey and drab utilitarian ship. I guess Sharif realised if we were going to be searching the Arctic Ocean, we might as well do it in style.
I'll give you guys the full tour. First you should get settled. The stairs are just on your left through that door there.
She fished a set of keys from her pocket and handed it to me.
Once you drop off your stuff, Sharif wants everyone to gather back here.
I got it, thanks. She flashed me with a toothy smile before walking up the steps to the upper floor. There was a buzz of chatter and excited conversation from the cabins as I descended the stairs. The corridor of the cabins was a bit less swanky than upstairs. I could see the others of the open cabins, admiring their accommodations for the foreseeable future. Over halfway down the corridor, I found the door to my cabin. Garrett Reed. I slid the key in and unlocked it. First thing that struck me was the smell, a piney wood scent. The room seemed a bit bigger than it was, thanks to the light-painted walls, and the mahogany panelling along the separating wall gave it a touch of class. I had a double bed all to myself too. Pretty sweet. In the corner by the door was a small sofa and a coffee table, on which a teapot and cups were already placed. I suddenly realised I was gasping for a cuppa, more than a cigarette even. I wouldn't call it high-class living, but for a ship cabin it was pretty nice. Better than a lot of hotel rooms I'd stayed in, certainly. With a relieved sigh, I slipped my backpack off and placed it on the bed. My back was matted and hot from my jacket and the weight of the pack. It had been fine out in the cold. Now we were in a cosy environment, I was sweating up a storm. Gave myself a sniff. It was hard to trust my nose from a few years of smoking, but I detected the unpleasant scent of sweat. What if I have time for a shower?
Hey Garrett, meeting starting.
Of course not. Come in. With a heavy sigh and hoping I could perhaps sit apart from the others until I could wash, I made my way back into the corridor, locking my cabin behind me.
Pretty nice, huh? Oh, it's not bad actually. I wasn't really sure what to expect since this isn't exactly a holiday. At least we might be able to see some neat stuff during the search. Wildlife, maybe even an aurora. I wouldn't count on seeing much. This time of year we'll probably get polar night.
A polar night?
Basically when night lasts longer than 24 hours. Besides, this isn't a sightseeing tour. We're here for a reason.
Sounds weird.
After I brought my camera with me.
A pang of irritation hit me at his whining. What do you think this was, a fucking holiday?
Anyway, let's get going. I want to see what Sharif has to say for himself.
Yeah, same. The three of us made our way up and back towards the lounge.
As we entered the lounge, June was behind the bar stocking some bottles. She gave us a cheeky grin as we passed. Sitting on the nearby sofa was Joseph. He had a cup of something dark, probably coffee, before him, watching the gathering in the conference room with interest. Everyone was gathered in the adjoining dining room, seated around a large table with Sharif sat at the head. There was a smattering of conversation when we arrived. Sharif watched us with an intense look, his fingers steepled before him. Even with his stony expression, I could sense the irritation from him. I took a free seat beside Dana on the top of the table on Sharif's right. Gail sat on the other side of Dana. Stefan sat beside Arran, who gave him a courteous smile and a nod. And now that we are all present. He gave me, Stefan and Gail pointed looks, like a scolded student being given a talking to by a teacher. I'm sure you're all curious about the specifics of this expedition, most of all the new information about the location of the Arran. The room was so quiet I could swear I could hear my own heartbeat. As such, I will. One moment, Sharif. All eyes went to Gail. Why don't you all introduce ourselves? I don't know about anyone else here, but I've never met any of you before. It was hard to tell Sharif's thoughts from his expression. He seemed to have a permanent look of irritated boredom. Before he could say anything, though, Rufus leaned forward onto the table. Oh, great idea. I'll go first. Rufus Dixon, pleased to meet you all. My sister Hannah was the first officer. His baritone voice had a bit of a southern US drawl to it. Despite his size, he radiated a warm friendliness. How pleased to meet you. All eyes moved to the next person along. Nervous cough, Arran spoke softly, barely a mumble. I'm Arran Marsh. Carrie, my big sister, was the navigator. Stefan, who'd been fidgeting more and more, finally burst. Come on, what's with the walls? They're still out here. All eyes turned to him. Even Tabby stopped fiddling with her phone to stare at him. Sharif pinched the bridge of his muzzle in exasperation. Without skipping a beat, he leaned forward, gazing from face to face as if daring anyone to contradict him. Stefan Golliweb, my big bro is alive. I'm going to bring him home. Only the soft sounds of June stocking the bar could be heard in the silence that followed. Even that halted when June realised the clinking was drawing everyone's attention. Everyone now turned to look at Tabby, who was still staring at Stefan. When she sensed all eyes on her, she immediately leaned back in her seat with a disinterested expression. Guess it's me, Tabby. Mom was the ship's doctor. And then she turned to glare at Gail. And for the record, this is all Gail's idea. I don't want to be here, so the sooner this is over, the better. The look between them could have killed. I'm guessing Gail's regretting this introductions business. Well, I'm Gail, Gail Waters. Mom was... She called herself, returning the contemptuous look Tabby gave her. Is Dr. Emma Waters, as Tabby said, who is my sister, in case it wasn't obvious. The two stared each other down for a period of time I could only describe as, please God, kill me now for all the awkwardness does, before the tigress mercifully cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. She wore a slightly smug expression, arms folded, her piercing eyes moving over each speaker in turn. Yeah, I'm Dana. Captain McGregor was my father. And assuming Sharif wasn't blown smoke about collective ashes we find the Arran, I will prove he wasn't responsible for her disappearance. She shot Sharif a sharp look. Unfortunately for her, he looked utterly unmoved. In fact, he looked bored, if anything. As I noticed, everyone had turned their gazes to me. I felt my skin burn and my pulse quicken. I hated being the centre of attention. I turned my face and my scarred eye was harder to see, as pointless as it was. I'm Garrett. Garrett Reed. Pleased to meet you. I cringed at the quavering in my voice. My older brother was a mechanic. When I saw Stefan and Gail shift uncomfortably, I realised I'd said it was. Their sad expressions triggered a twinge of guilt and I couldn't meet their eyes. The truth is, it's what I believed, that this was a search, not a rescue. Now only Sharif remained. He stayed silent, his hands still steepled before him as he stared at nothing in particular. Well? Very well. I am Professor Sharif Abdi. You may call me Sharif. As my letter explained, I provided most of the funding for this expedition. Professor, what's your field?
Anthropology. As for who I knew aboard, again my letter made it clear.
Can you remind me? It was a while ago.
I could have sworn I saw a flicker of emotion through his stony expression. Professor Hagen.
No way, you knew the guy in charge?
I will explain if you could be quiet for a moment. Stefan looked like he wanted to say more, but a barrage of annoyed looks silenced him. Professor Hagen was my supervisor for my PhD. He was also a close friend. That is why I am here. This is as much as I'm willing to say on the topic. Now if we're all finished getting to know each other. He shot Gale a piercing look, making her shift uncomfortably in her seat. No one else looked interested in interrupting. I understand you may all be skeptical. Nearly 2 years' worth of concerted search efforts for nothing. We have all put a great deal of money into this expedition. I assure you, I have planned the most efficient search pattern that will make best use of our available time.
How long will the search last then? Your letter didn't specify that.
2 weeks. Tabby audibly groaned.
Oh great, a fortnight in this tub, we don't even get to sightsee. But the official search found the Arran radio is positioned miles away from this new search area.
True, a radio contact seemed normal at the time, but the GPS combined with...
Wait a minute.
All eyes turned to Stefan, who had an intense look in his eye.
Radio contact was not normal. Reported someone had been killed, their instruments were behaving strangely. I remember the recordings were an inquiry. The captain mentioned the crew was having discipline issues. So what? We know for this. The Arran's last known position was miles away from where it's supposed to be. Didn't matter if they got lost or instruments failed in a mutiny.
Arran visibly seethed their insinuation, while Rufus put his hands on the table, barely containing his anger.
My sister would never have allowed a mutiny, not in a million years.
There's no way Carrier got them lost, I guarantee it. Mom mentioned something about...
Everyone started raising their voices at once, each protesting to the point where I couldn't make out what any one person was saying.
Enough!
His normally formal, quiet voice boomed out, startling everyone. He was stood, hands placed flat on the table as he stared down at us. We all fell silent. Even June, all the way over at the bar, had frozen in the middle of placing a bottle on the shelf, seemingly afraid of clinking the glass. I'm not here to relitigate the inquiry. I don't care about blame. If you wish to repeat the same arguments of the last 2 years, do so on your own time. Do not waste mine. Is this acceptable? It wasn't a question so much as a dare. His sapphire blue eyes scanned each of us in turn as if challenging us to speak up. Even Rufus, beefcake that he was, looked really uncomfortable under his unrelated gaze. Excellent. And just like that, he sat back down, hands steepled once more as if nothing had happened. A few uncertain looks were exchanged across the table. As has been pointed out, the Arran reported their last position many miles from their planned route, and well, of course, relative to their previous report. This, he pulled a large roll of paper from the bag beside him and rolled it out over the table. It's a map of the Arctic region, with Svalbard near the bottom left. Longyearbyen was marked with a black cross, the dotted line leaving to the north, bringing toward Greenland. I'd seen this so many times before. Countless reconstructions, simulations, the path of the Arran's voyage. There was a second red dotted line and a series of red X marks with one large blue X. The explanation, and the reason we are all here, is that Professor Hagen may have used a different route. You all exchanged confused looks.
Different how? And how do you know?
Because he left behind an alternative itinerary about a second route for the expedition in case they hit multi-year ice. The Arran was rated for first-year ice.
What's the difference?
First-year ice is less than a year old. Multi-year ice is potentially several years old. Multi-year is thicker than first year. Enough that ships may be rated specifically for it, to be harder than concrete.
Well, enough to hold a hull.
Hagen understood that if the chosen route is untenable, they'd require an alternative. However, the second route was quickly irrelevant because an ice report suggested it would not be a problem.
Wait, you think you found some note from Hagen saying, hey, if you don't find us where we're supposed to be, try here? Are we supposed to believe that?
Hagen left the itinerary of the University of Bergen's Vieknes Center for Climate Research as a routine procedure when planning an expedition. But that alone wouldn't be enough. The Arran's last reported position was only a few miles off of the alternative route. At this, he tapped a large blue X. I still sound shaky. Inquiry said their GPS was faulty. They could have been lost. I'm not finished. The inquiry noted several odd GPS signals that placed the Arran miles away from its supposed true position. They were assumed to be errors. But if you match the aberrant coordinates... His finger tapped the red X's on the map. We all peered closely at the red dotted line, and sure enough the marks tracked almost perfectly along the red path. I believe the Arran chose to use the second route for some reason. It might have been a last-minute change due to change in weather or ice. Oh, it's a cover story. The first route was a trick, the second was the true course all along. All eyes glanced over the possum. He had an intense look in his eye as he stared at the chart. He finally looked up, his usual exuberance gone. Sharif gave him a withering look. Please don't jump to conclusions. Regardless, the summary is, we have a potential location to search.
You got this new information, why not bring it to the authorities? Why get us to fund this trip?
I did. He hissed the words with a ripple of anger in his otherwise cool exterior. The authorities did not feel it sufficient to organize a new search. This was my last option. Believe me, if I'd had the means to fund this, it did not require expending so much of my own money, or yours, I'd have taken it. The vast majority of the funds for this trip was hiring the sonar apparatus we'll be using to search the seabed once we arrive at our search location. Your contributions helped with chartering this vessel. But I believe I've said enough. We'll depart in an hour. If you're having second thoughts, now is the time. It'll be approximately 3 days before we reach the search area. While you are free to make use of the ship's facilities and hospitality, please remember you are here for a reason. But for now, are there any more questions? There was a tense silence. Sharif scanned each of us with that piercing gaze. Very well. If you all don't mind, I need to discuss the journey with the captain. And with that, he rolled up the chart, scooped up his notebook, and strode up the stairs leading to the upper deck. I'm glad to see we're all friends now. And Tabby. Despite her snark, it did at least seem to drain some of the tension. Rufus stretched, loudly cracking his knuckles and popping his shoulders.
Oh, come this far, I'm in.
Same. Find the Arran. Well, at least I can know for sure. We'll find him. We'll bring them home. You'll see. Evening, guys. So I hate to bore you, but I need to give you a safety brief before we do anything else. Legal requirement for your own safety. You get the gist.
Her expression hardened from her usual sunny disposition. She began to explain to the safety procedures and survival information. She gave a well-rehearsed speech about the ship's muster points, procedure for emergencies, where to find fire extinguishers. It's extremely important that you wear your personal flotation devices in the event of an emergency, and whenever you're instructed to do so by the crew. If you fall into the Arctic Ocean, you could die in as little as 1 minute. If you find yourself in the water, you need to resist the urge to panic. Get your breathing under control and don't thrash about unnecessarily. You'll then have roughly 10 minutes of useful movement to get yourself out of the water or into a stable situation where you're floating before hypothermia robs you of movement. After that, you have about an hour before you become unconscious from hypothermia. Provided you're wearing your PFD, you may have about another hour before your heart stops from the cold. Every effort will be made to rescue you if you fall overboard, so you must remember these rules to maximise your chance of surviving if you end up in the water. Are we all clear? With such dire warnings, all the tension before came rushing back. I swallowed nervously and gave a nod. I hadn't really sunk in just how dangerous this voyage could be. Everyone else, with the noticeable exception of Rufus, seemed to be equally discomforted, but everyone gave a nod or grunt of acknowledgement.
Good. I'm sure you won't need this information, but it's important you know. While I have your attention, here's your handbook. It contains all safety information I just told you, a guide to the ship and its facilities, rules. You get the picture. Breakfast is served between 8:30 and 9:30 a.m, lunch is 12 noon till 1:30 p.m, and dinner is between 4:30 and 6 p.m. Any questions or concerns? I'm your woman.
And just like that, her bright grin was back.
Oh, I'm starving. I hope they got some decent chow. Chef is currently preparing a late supper. Please be patient. In the meantime, can I fix you folks a nightcap?
Well, that'd be the best damn idea I've heard all day.
Damn straight. Oh, sounds like a plan. No thanks. I wouldn't mind a snack. I haven't eaten since lunch. I'm pretty hungry too. I'll wait for something to eat.
June hurried behind the bar, followed by Dana, Rufus and Arran. Soon she was expertly preparing cocktails. She made a bit of a show of it too. Quite the talented lass. Gail and Tabby took a seat in the sofas where Joseph had been sitting. Joseph was nowhere to be seen. Suppose being the bosun meant he'd be pretty busy. Stefan had wandered over the hatch that separated the bar area from the kitchen. I wasn't super tired right now. Having been told I had time to leave this ship before she departed, I found myself seriously considering leaving. I thought of how much money Mum had poured into this trip. My mind was racing. Maybe chatting a bit would help loosen me up. Certainly almost nothing about Dana or Rufus except two on the Arran they were related to. Arran seemed a bit oblivious, and I could already tell he was a flirt. Seemed to be a decent sort, though. Stefan was by the open hatch of the kitchen, watching the chef work. He was a weirdo, but friendly enough. Plus, I was fascinated by his apparent rock-solid conviction the Arran crew was alive. And there was Gail and Tabby. Gail was lovely. I couldn't wrap my head around her conviction. Like Stefan, the Arran crew was still alive. Tabby was a bit of a brat. Didn't much like her. Based on what she'd said, she'd been dragged on this voyage by Gail, despite seemingly accepting their mother was almost certainly dead. I could empathise with that, at least a little bit, I suppose. Who to speak with? Stefan was watching through the open kitchen hatch, staring at something within. As I got closer, there was a flash of orange and a whoosh. Cool! As I got close, I saw the chef working his magic on a wok full of soy chunks, living with a bright plume of flame. Stefan seemed mesmerised by it. I mean, it was pretty cool. My cooking skills amounted to stuffing whatever into a pot and stewing the living daylights out of it. Hey, how are you? As I reached out to touch him, he jolted so much you'd think I'd tasted him. Yeah! Ah! Oh, don't sneak up on me like that. I nearly had a heart attack. Damn, man, so did I. We stared at each other a few moments before bursting into laughter. You need to relax more. You need to wear a bell on your neck so you can't just sneak up on people. I wasn't sneaking. He cut me off with a loud snort, chuckling at my indignation. I found myself laughing, especially the mental image of wearing a bell. Isn't it cool? I love the way they can do that. Just flip stuff like that. It's pretty cool, yeah. What if it's just showing off? Heh, maybe. So, what did you think of Sharif, I mean? What do you mean? Don't think it's a little convenient? He knows the leader of the expedition, claims he's a friend, and just when the official search dries up, suddenly finds a note from Hagen pointing out exactly where he is. Coincidence? I don't know. Come on, dude. Believe everything you're told at face value? Mate, why would he lie? I don't know, but that doesn't mean he isn't. He gave me a frustrated look. Never mind, I'm too hungry to explain. As he emphasised his point, his stomach gave a loud growl. Alex always made the best goulash. Oh, what I'd give for a bowl right now. Your brother, the steward, yeah? Yep, with him cooking, I can only imagine what amazing chow the crew got to eat. I could swear I could almost see drool on his lips. Sounds cool. Bet your mum and dad appreciate having a good cook around. His bright smile and happy gaze melted away. They died when I was young. My stomach clenched and my own smile vanished. God damn. Oh, mate, I'm so sorry. No, it's fine. You didn't know. My bro raised me most of my life, so we're super close. I can cook a mean borscht because of him, plus he got me into lighters too. Oh, he collected. Yeah, it's how I knew about your Elson. It's a pretty specific interest, if you don't mind my saying. You don't even smoke, am I right? Nope, never did. I did Alex. I just find them fascinating. He was a strange one. He seemed like a decent type, though my curiosity was building to the point where I couldn't hold my question anymore. I was meaning to ask, if you don't mind, of course, but
Why are you so convinced that they're alive? His expression was odd. Not upset, more pensive. Have you heard of the Fiala expedition? Inwardly I grimaced, bracing myself for a dose of crazy. No. It was a polar expedition to reach the North Pole that took place at the turn of the 20th century. It failed though. The ship got crushed in ice. But despite that, the expedition lost only one crew member, despite being trapped on the ice for nearly 2 years. Can you imagine? 2 whole years with a turn-of-the-century ship in the Arctic? Now, imagine what the crew of the Arran could survive with a modern ship, all of its supplies and technologies. Diesel-powered generators, tinned food, survival equipment. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean she couldn't have sunk, right? He gave me a dirty look. Think a ship that size and that modern would just sink? Why not? You don't think modern ships sink all the time? The Arran had state-of-the-art emergency equipment. Didn't you pay any attention to the inquiry? Included detachable beacons with GPS. They went down something would have left behind to tell us. The fact they didn't means that wherever she is, the Arran is afloat. I would stake my life on it. Judging by the death glare he gave me, I believed it. All right. I held up my hands placatingly. Look, just trust me on this, okay? I've done my research. Believe me, the Arran went missing for a reason. Oh no. Professor Hagen's a climate scientist. He's an anthropologist. Why did he lead a mission to investigate glacial melting? Isn't that up? I've done it. I've set him off. If he starts talking about the Jews or the Rockefellers, I am out of here. Yeah, look, I want to have a wander around. I'm not sure I'll be staying on board, so I want to get a feel of the place before I decide, you know? Oh. Yeah, of course. But I hope you stay, you know? Thanks, man. See you later. He gave a cheeky grin, waved, then turned to stare through the kitchen hatch once more. God, when is dinner ready?
I had to chase the son of a bitch across the base to get my pants back. One of the bastards threw them in the shower stall with a private and got them all soaked. So there I was at roll call, my pants plastered to my ass and legs, and I was the only one naked from the waist up. The rest of them were laughing. Dane already had a pint of beer. Arran had cider, I think. Rufus also had a pint of beer, already 3/4 drained. Hey, mind if I take a seat? Oh, sure, Garrett. Hey, miss some crazy shit Rufus got up to. The sergeant made me get down and give him 50, and I got to 33. He made a ripping noise and mimed the splitting of something with his hands. I found myself moving the entire squad. Dana and June burst into giggles while Arran face-palmed. Let me guess, he gave you even more push-ups? 100, plus a lap around the base with my ass showing. I admit the mental image was both funny and kind of appealing. I joined in the chuckling as June sidled along the bar toward me. Get you anything? She motioned to the bar, stocked the girls with a variety of spirits. My stomach tightened and my smile faded a little. No thank you, I don't drink. Oh, seriously? What kind of man are you? I bristled, not appreciating her implication. A man who doesn't drink. I shot her a glare and she noticed I wasn't laughing, nor for that matter were the others. Christ, it was a joke, lighten up. Hey, anyone else want something? I can whip a real good pina colada. Oh, me please. Yeah, I'll take a pint of that Norwegian beer,
I wouldn't love it, coming right up.
I'm much obliged.
Yeah, have another pint too. Alrighty. Arran nudged me and gave a nod towards Gale and Tabby sitting on the sofas. Could be more obvious they were pissed with each other. What's their deal? Not sure.
I reckon someone should check on them.
Oh, they even be. Whatever argument they're having, it's none of our business. Besides, they're sisters. They'll figure it out on their own.
I don't know. I hate it when ladies fight. Much rather hear them laugh and shout, you know.
Oh, Rufus, you're such a sweetheart. I think women don't fight or argue.
No, I just hate it when they do. Feels wrong.
You're kind of chauvinistic thing to say.
Well, I guess I'm kind of like a knight in that regard.
I think you have chivalry, although the difference is pretty academic.
Arran, June, Dana and I exchanged baffled looks, but I ended up smiling anyway. It's sort of a sweet sentiment.
So, Dana, Captain McGregor's your dad? In response, she swigged from her beer, audibly gulping before thumping the glass down and sighing. She drained almost half the thing in one go. Even Rufus, already having emptied his first glass, gave her a funny look. Emphasis on was. Why? Oh, well, I was just curious about him. Carrie told me a lot of stuff about him. What stuff? Well, good things. She always liked him, said he's a good leader. Wasn't Carrie the navigator? The tense look shot between me and Rufus. June's smile faded again. She poured the pint, seemingly bracing herself for another argument. Yes? In other words, the one who's supposed to keep the Arran, not lost. Despite not being in physical contact, I could feel his body tense. Soft tapping against the bar stool hit my ears, his paws rapidly bouncing off it. It was an instinctual thing for Lapines. A stress and occasionally a fear response to rapidly thump the ground with a paw. But judging by the sound of grinding teeth, this was less stress, more fury. He turned, facing her fully with a murderous look in his eyes. The fuck are you suggesting? Oh, fuck no, we are not having this bullshit. Calm down. What do you think I'm suggesting, rabbit? The venom she put into the word gave us all a moment of pause. Referring to someone by their species wasn't taboo or anything, but Tom made it clear there's a lot more to it. You, say that again. Hey guys, enough. Though his rich, deep voice lent way to his command, it was June who took us all by surprise. That is more than enough, Dana. Even the tigress seemed taken aback. Such a sweet-hearted girl, June barked like a drill instructor, fury etched on her face as she stared Dana down. I'll pretend I did not hear that tone you just took. If you ever speak like that on the ship again to crew or guest, I'll inform the captain we'll return to port and expel you from the ship. Do I make myself clear? There was silence in the room. Even Arran's foot had stopped thumping. Perfectly. June's expression remained stern, but she placed the beer in front of Dana. When she had the chance to place Arran or Rufus's drinks, Dana necked the rest for a drink before grabbing a new full pint. I glanced at Arran, meeting his eyes, which was still glaring daggers at Dana. Wordlessly, I inquired if he was okay. He untensed, giving me a half-hearted smile and nod for grabbing his own drink. With the mood very much ruined, I had no reason to sit here anymore. Gave Arran, Rufus and June a small wave and excused myself. The two sisters were sitting around the same round table, with a hefty gap between them. Gail was nestled in the bend of the couch, where Tabby was a good couple of feet apart from her. Shockingly, Tabby was futzing with her phone while Gail was staring off at the bar absently, clearly fuming. Gail's legs were crossed, her hoof bobbing up and down in clear agitation. I gingerly stepped closer. Gail didn't even notice me until I was almost standing directly in front of her. Oh, Garrett. I'm sorry, I was... No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. I gestured to the far end of the sofa. May I? Oh, don't be silly, sit. She brightened immediately, patting the seat next to her. I shimmied between the table and sofa, plopping down a respectful distance from Gail. I don't bite Garrett. I don't know, wouldn't want to tangle with those horns. I don't have a spare eye anymore. We both chuckled and she scooted closer to me anyway. Not quite touching, but certainly pretty close. So what was the racist hats issue? Gail looked uncomfortable, but unlike most of Tabby's outbursts, she didn't challenge her or chide her on it. Something to do with Arran being Carrie Marsh's brother. Apparently she figures the navigator was responsible for the Arran disappearing. You tell us Snooty Bridge ultimate responsibility lies with the Captain Daddy? Tabby, please, it's useless to throw blame around. I'm not. She's going to be a cunt to Arran because of his sister and his race. Someone should throw her daddy's position in her face. I mean, she had a point. Even Gail seemed to think so, given she didn't contradict her, when she flinched at Tabby's language. I shrugged. I agreed with her, but what more could I add? So, what do you make of Sherry's plan? Well, if what he says is true, it's possible the official search missed them. I spoke carefully, keeping an eye on expression to gauge her reaction. That said, you have to agree that they might... they could be...
Her expression flickered ever so slightly. It was obvious where I was going with this, and she decided to cut to the chase. Garrett, you don't have to tell me how hopeless it sounds. Believe me, I think about it every day. If I don't hold on to hope, then what? Mom is just gone. Nothing to bury, nothing to mourn. Though her expression was stoic, I could hear the slight break in her voice. Her bright eyes flicked away from mine and focused. I could very much understand. Many, many days, weeks, months with Mum watching her cycle between bawling despair and catatonia gave me more than my fill of the grieving process. I mean, I don't know. Don't you want to know what happened to your brother? Or at least to know for sure one way or the other? I guess. She noticed my hesitation and paused a moment, looking in my eyes until I couldn't meet her gaze. You didn't get along with him, right? I continued to stare off at the floor, hugging myself under the guise of folding my arms. The pit in my stomach worsened, and the prospect of just quitting this trip became ever more tempting. Before I could answer, Tabby cut in with a loud tut and sigh. Leave him alone. The look on Gail's face could have killed. I'd seen her angry during the meeting, but this was something else. I found myself shrinking back from her. Nobody asked you. Of course, just say you didn't ask I wanted to come along this fucking trip. Tabby. The warning in her voice made my fur prickle. I could hear her seething, but Tabby clearly had enough. You think I don't care about Mom? You think I want to never see her again? Not have a body to bury? I raised my hand in a futile attempt to placate her, but clearly she'd been bottling stuff up for a while. What I don't want is to keep picking at this fucking wolf the rest of my life. She jumped to her feet, glaring at Gail. The briefest moment I was scared they'd going to start throwing punches. But, thankfully I think, she turned on her heel and stormed out towards the cabins. Once again the air went frigid as all eyes followed Tabby, then focused on us, but mainly Gail. Her eyes remained fixed on the door Tabby had left through, gazing daggers and apparently oblivious to the fact that everyone was now staring. The dire warnings June had given off of an icy death in the Arctic waters sounded like a fantastic evening plan if it meant leaving this situation. I gave an awkward cough. No effect. I swear I could hear her teeth grinding. I gingerly reached out, terrified I'd lose fingers. Gail? That seemed to snap her out of it. She took a moment, scanned the room and realising she was centre of attention. Sorry everyone, it's been a stressful time. Everyone turned back to what they were doing and the smattering of chat started anew. Gail and I sat in awkward silence for a moment, her gaze locked on the table. She's not entirely wrong. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. She didn't look up at me, instead staring and focused. I did insist she come with me. My mouth opened to speak, but anything I wanted to say caught in my throat. Really, what could I say to her? Tabby herself said they had this argument many times. I just didn't want. I could swear I saw tears stand to form as her voice broke. I fought the urge to reach out to her. I'm sorry, Garrett. Could you excuse me? I nodded numbly and she stood, giving me an embarrassed smile for a quick walk into the door leading to the cabins. The chatting dimmed for a moment she left and I felt a few gazes on me. Well, that could have gone better. Realising I was sitting awkwardly alone, I rose as quietly and nonchalantly as I could, given being a foot from ground zero. I hope they're okay. As much as I wanted to go after her to check, this really wasn't my fight. My nerves were jittery enough when I saw the clock above the bar. 12:18 a.m. Just over 10 minutes before the ship departed. If I was going to back out of this, now was the time to decide. Trying to conceal my shaking hands, I fished my pack of smokes out of my pocket and glanced within. A single white filter stared back. My last smoke. I felt a jolt of mild panic. I couldn't last this voyage without smokes. As good an excuse as any to... If you're looking for cigarettes, we sell them here at the commissary. June obviously spotted me examining my pack. She gave me a little smile, eyes twinkling. Ordinarily I'd be relieved to know where to get more smokes. My perfect excuse was now gone. I returned a strained grin and stalked off to the door to the deck. The bracing chill wind hit particularly hard after exiting the warm, cosy lounge. My nose would absolutely dry out in this weather. I wasn't looking forward to that. I remembered Mum and how I told her I'd let her know my progress. Pulling my phone out, I typed, "On board the Sylvia, I'm okay. Love you. Talk to you tomorrow." I guess I could call, but I really wasn't in the mood for a conversation right now. At least she knew I was here, safe and sound. I moved further up the deck towards the bow. I slid the cigarette out of the box and took it between my lips. I brought my lighter up. Motherfucker. Why of all times it suddenly decided now was the perfect time to stop working? Cartella? The sounds of heavy hoofbeats announced Joseph's arrival for his greeting. At least I thought it was a greeting. I offered a small wave of going back to trying to light my smoke. He watched me with those piercing eyes I awkwardly tried to light up. And then, just like that, it flicked into life. Not wanting to tempt fate, I drew on my smoke and felt its warmth fill me up. With a heavy sigh, I blew a thick cloud of smoke from my muzzle and closed my eyes, allowing my muscles to loosen. The weight of my addiction, indulged once again, quietened. "I need a light." He stepped closer, leaning on the rail and gazing out of the port in the twinkling of the Longyearbyen lights. "No, thank you." We stood there in silence for a while. I joined him in staring out towards the town. So calm and quiet, inviting. I should have time if I ran to grab my pack. My mind bounced back and forth. I anxiously debated. "You want to leave?" Glancing at him, I noticed he was watching me intently. It wasn't a question, but a statement of fact. I took another drawer and turned, leaning my hips against the railing. Am I that obvious? Like open book. His English was a little awkward, and his accent was pretty thick. About his size, his eyes held warmth, perhaps concern. With a heavy sigh, I blew a thick cloud of smoke from my muzzle. Why the fuck am I here? My rhetorical question echoed around the decks. I made a gesture with my hand, indicating the Sylvia. This is pointless. We're not going to find them. Yet you come anyway. My mum wants me here. As far as I'm concerned, my brother can go The bile rose up my throat as I caught myself just before I could launch into a rant. Seriously, what was I saying to this guy I'd met an hour ago and barely said 2 words to? The wolf seemed unmoved, watching me evenly with a sidelong glance before slowly turning to look back towards the lights of the town. We were quiet once more. This time I got the impression he was deep in thought, considering what to say. The billowing mist from his nostrils suggested deep, slow and even breaths, compared to my own shallow and slightly elevated breaths. Thinking about Connor got me worked up again. I could feel my tail curling upwards slightly in agitation. You should leave. That surprised me. He spoke with certainty, glancing silently on me once more. You sound pretty sure. This ship. He slowly nodded his huge head back towards the ship's superstructure. Not good. It took me a moment to puzzle over his words, thinking I hadn't quite understood, or perhaps he'd spoken in Russian and I hadn't caught it. Not good. Ah. He returned my baffled look with a blank expression, his eyes never leaving me. Meaning what exactly? He looked away, his gaze focusing on something in the distance. A few awkward moments passed without an answer. Well, are you going to answer? For a few moments more, he was silent before slowly pushing himself back upright and turning to face me, towering over me. Just know, this trip is dangerous. I can't say more. I was about to demand a better explanation when the sounds of boots drew my gaze towards the ship's main deck. Ah, there you are. June was quick walking towards us, waving brightly. Glad I found you, Garrett. The ship will be departing shortly. I wanted to check if you're still okay. God damn, was that obvious to everyone? I gave Joseph a long, hard glare, debating whether to challenge him again on his cryptic warning. The giant just stared back, completely nonplussed. Yeah, just... I looked into the drawer, looking wistfully back at the town. Having second thoughts about this trip. I just don't know why I need to be here. If you find something, I'll know about it eventually when you return. I'm basically just a glorified tourist. Don't you want to be there if we do find something new? I don't want to pry. If you really want to leave, I'll ask the captain to wait till you've disembarked. Really?
Of course, Sharif likes to play the boss. You'll put money into this just as he did. The trip is delayed a few minutes. No one will care.
They both watched me intently, June with a look of kindly concern, Joseph a more analytical look. It was difficult to discern his facial expressions. Cassie looked back toward the town, its lights beckoning to me. Memories of Mum came flooding back to me. Images of the misery and inconsolable grief she'd endured. The almost manic delight she'd shown when that fucking letter first arrived. A couple of weeks on a glorified tourist ship. If that's what it took. I took a final draw of my cigarette before stubbing it out on the metal bulwark. I came all this way. Might as well see it through, right?
That's the spirit.
Joseph watched me with a curious look before simply nodding and looking back towards town.
Well, say we go inside. Dinner is ready. Don't want to miss out.
Actually, I think I'll skip it. Pretty tired. I had a long flight. Thanks.
Fair enough. Good night and sweet dreams.
We walked together back into the lounge while parting ways at the doors leading to the cabins. The entire time, gnawing at the back of my mind was a voice screaming I should grab my bag and dash for the gangway. My stomach felt like it was going to empty itself all over the floor the entire way. The sense of building dread as my window of escape closed filled my thoughts the entire way back to my cabin. As soon as the door was closed, I locked it behind me and leaned my head against the cold wood. Losing my opportunity to leave was weighing heavily. Now I was in this for the long haul. Resentment bubbled inside me. I was taking potentially weeks out of my life to be a tourist on a search the combined efforts of many ships, aircraft, and rescue organisations failed to turn up anything on. All for Connor. No, Mum asked me to do this, knowing for sure it was all important to her. I turned, quickly stripping off my winter clothing. The interior of the ship was slightly chilly once I was naked, which is how I liked it. It's not easier to sleep when it's slightly too cold, when you can wrap yourself up in the covers, than when it's too hot. Matted fur is not fun, when you already smell of tobacco. I sniffed my arm. My sense of smell was not what it once was, but it still reeked of the stuff. I kept reminding myself of the many reasons to quit smoking. When the nerves hit, it was like being on autopilot. I decided to grab a quick shower. It was pretty pungent. Even ignoring the smoke, wearing thick winter clothes does work up a sweat. Grabbing my toiletries bag from my pack, I padded into the small bathroom. Once again grateful to have a cabin to myself. Didn't have to worry about someone barging in. The bathroom was tiny, just barely enough to fit the toilet, shower and sink, kind of a sharp contrast to the bedroom. Space was a premium on board a ship, I guess. Imagine the tourists typically renting this ship, spending most of their time taken in the Arctic. As soon as I flicked on the light, I saw a tall, skinny wolf staring at me in the mirror. Or at least one eye was. I looked like a freak. Among many reasons I avoided relationships. The scars on my right wrist were something I always kept covered. Even though they're on the sides of my wrist rather than the underside, I always worried people would confuse it with self-harm. It was a conversation I could absolutely do without. The fact they were bite scars would only lead to more questions, and I was reminded of a particularly insufferable workmate at my last job who would not stop asking about my eye. Part of the reason I grew out my hair to cover it, even if technically it was against safety regs. My blind left eye stared blankly, grey-white with a cataract. The scar running down my face over my left eye aligned almost perfectly with the middle. Livid, furless skin scarred from the claw that robbed me of vision in that eye. And further down my muzzle, another scar, and unlike on my eye, this one was always in my field of view. Constant reminder. Fuck. The familiar stinging began in my ruined eye, like a sharp knife was slicing into it, combined with the worst case of sandy eye imaginable. Closing it, I fumbled for my bag. Tears poured uncontrollably from it, and my face scrunched up in response to the pain. My hand pulled out and tossed the stuff within aside onto the floor as I scrabbled for my proxy. My hand touched a small bottle. As I brought it out, the white-coloured eye drops bottle came into focus. With practiced ease, I tilted back my head, forced over my eye with one hand and squeezed several drops onto the scarred surface of my left eye. After a few moments, the drops took effect, and a cooling, soothing sensation washed away the pain. The trick of the pain was still a mystery. Doctors suggested anxiety, weather, even my smoking. I knew the ultimate cause.
Son of a bitch. I threw the vial back in my bag. The proximeticaine, I typically only needed it once every couple of weeks, or I didn't use it twice in a single day. I had a bunch of bottles to tide me over, but I felt a renewed pang of anxiety as I realized I would need to be careful. 2 weeks in this weather might drain my supplies quickly. With the pain gone, I was once again able to stare at the wreck, gazing glumly back at me. Catching the scent of tobacco and sweat, I pulled the face. I couldn't put it off any longer. I scooped the bottle of shampoo where I tossed it aside, hunted for my eye drops. Specially formulated for canines. The shower was kind of cramped, but at least everything looked pretty well maintained. As the hot water poured over me, I felt the filth of a long, sweaty trip and many smoke breaks slough off me. My eyes closed in bliss. I worked the shampoo into my fur and built a lather. Moving my hands through my fur, I worked the soap into my body and my hair. The soothing warmth loosened my taut muscles. Felt an ache near the base of my spine, as my tail, which had been curled in agitation but God only knows how long at this point, finally sagged. Relaxed and my body let go of the tension that had me so tightly wound up. I made sure to massage my tail, wincing as the chill-induced pins and needles reminded me just how extreme the cold out there could be. Canine and lupine tail movements were largely instinctual and involuntary, except where the canid was particularly disciplined or self-aware. I wondered how my tail had come across the others up till now. I ran my hands along its length, wringing it out like a wet towel, and once again wincing as the feeling came back. For us lupine, and canines for that matter, tail movements were often misinterpreted by others. A wolf giving you the stink eye? Well, his tail is wagging, so obviously he must secretly be happy. It wasn't that simple. For ferals, tail wagging was typically a sign of happiness. For ascensions, it could be a result of elevated mood, even if that mood was negative. Images of my dad and brother came rushing back, the pair of them squaring off, tails swaying even though any sane person could tell the atmosphere was anything but happy or amicable. The movie series Ryan Vaughan featured the suave, sophisticated titular Timberwolf protagonist, a British MI6 agent frequently tasked with saving the free world from cartoonish villains. One particular trait he had was the ability to suppress and fake his typical lupine tails. Tail movement, snarl and ear reflex, and fur bristling in order to appear unflappable and cool, collected and calm in any circumstance. Like many lupines and canines, I'd idolized him and tried to emulate his behaviour. I mean, who could resist a movie hero with his unflappably cool persona? Someone who could effortlessly control their typically involuntary outward tells? Of course, it's all theatre. While every canine and lupine knew there were aspects of their physiology they could somewhat control, it was a pseudoscience. At the end of the day, we can't resist our deepest impulses. The soap I'd been working into my fur began to slough off me, carrying with it the grime and filth of a very long and arduous journey. The stench of tobacco rose off me. Christ, did I really smell like this to others? I washed until the scent was no longer detectable, which took longer than I'd like to admit. Stepping out, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, my bedraggled fur beefily distracted from my scarring. I pulled on a towel, warm straight from the rack, and began to dry myself. My mixed feelings about this trip were being quickly buried under a wave of fatigue. It had been a very long trip here. I finished off my evening routine by brushing my teeth and giving myself one final dose of eye drops for the night. I really didn't want to wake up to searing pain. As I re-entered what would be my bedroom for the next few weeks, the freshly made bed looked so inviting. My bag was still sitting on my bed. I rummaged around for my phone charging cable. Fortunately, I remembered to bring a region adapter for the power socket. June mentioned breakfast at 8:30. Decided to set my alarm for 8 a.m, just to give me time to get my shit together. I wasn't a morning person. I pulled back the cover and half collapsed onto the slightly chilly sheets. Brief thoughts of what lay before us flickered through my mind before the sudden, overwhelming exhaustion hit me. Within minutes, I was out like a light. I don't remember much from my dream. They tend to be bizarre and utterly nonsensical, disconcerting none of them involving me being at college again, but having skipped so many classes there's no chance I'd pass my exam. Which didn't really make sense as a pretty good student. My brain had ways of finding new and ever more ingenious ways of tormenting me, though. I slept lightly, drifting in and out for a restless sleep. I didn't sleep well in new places, which was hardly unusual. The gentle sway of the ship in the water and the low hum of the engines added an extra alien quality. That knot in my stomach lingered,
Part of me cursed me for not demanding we turn back and let me off. That would be an imposition on everyone else. I awoke fully, turning over in bed. It was pleasantly cool, enough that I pulled the cover a little higher. It was absolute pitch black, though. Not even the dimmest moonlight came through the windows. As alien as it was, there's also a tranquil quality. Out here for the next few days, at least, I was a complete liberty. No work, no obligations. The realization helped loosen that knot in my stomach a little, and I flipped onto my belly, nursing into the plump, cool pillow. Ah! The sharp female scream sent a jolt through my body. My eyes snapped fully open, for all the good they would be in the inky blackness. My ears pricked up, the fur on my neck spiking as I trained to hear. It couldn't have been real, right? Instinctually, I reach over the bedside light. My hand swats to the wall, fumbling in the dark until I find the switch. Nothing happened. What the fuck is up with the lights? I pushed myself up and tried to disentangle my legs from the duvet. Some of my attempt to kick them off only makes it wrap around my paws. Get the fuck off! I finally freed myself and scrambled to my feet, suddenly realized I now had no idea where the door was. My lupine eyes were adjusting slowly. The vague outlines of objects started to coalesce. I stumbled to the door, arms outstretched just in case. I could really hear a commotion out in the hall as my hand fumbled for the door lock. The corridor was just as dark. The ship must have a power failure. Which, being a ship at sea, very much did not bode well. Who's there? Who screamed? Stefan? I saw the vague outline of the possum who was also groping blindly in the dark. Yes, his night vision wasn't as good as mine. Garrett? Where are you? I can't see a goddamn thing. Guys, it was Tabby. I heard her screaming. What in God's name is happening? Four of us called out in frustration. Even with my night vision, I could only barely see where they were. Rufus, just to your right. The cabin door is right there. I reached out to grab Stefan's hand and Arran's, then tugged them towards the big stag before they hurt themselves. Loud thumps sounded from the door as Rufus hammered it with a meaty fist. Tabby, Gale, you all okay? We clustered around the door. The scent of burnt lemons invaded my nose. I couldn't blame them for being scared, though. That scream had chilled my very blood. As I strained my ears, I could hear quiet voices, Gale's and Tabby's, one hysterical and raised, the other soothing and soft. It's okay, Rufus. Everything's fine. Just I didn't expect the lights to go out. Didn't sound like everything's okay. You all sure you're fine? Yes, just give me a moment, okay? Let me get decent. Any more movement in the room for a surge of humming rose in volume until... Yeah! Felt like someone shot lasers into my eyeball, and judging from the reaction of the others, they didn't fare much better from the sudden light. Took a few moments for my good eye to adjust. The more it did, the more the other guys came into view, and... Well, goddamn. Dude, is this really the time? See anything you like, Bunny? Yeah, 2 Twinks and a beefcake. I feel spoiled. Twink? Beefcake? Before we could give him a piece of our minds, the sound of the cabin door clicking open pulled our attention. I'm so sorry. I hope we didn't scare you guys. Oh. Well, aren't you fellas a sight for sore eyes? I know, right? Both Stefan and Rufus looked a little smug. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. My usual discomfort showed my body was slightly offset by the approving looks from Gale and Arran. You all sleep in your undies? Well, I sleep naked, but I figured you all wanted to see my bits flopping around in an emergency. Oh, you figured wrong. Jesus Christ, can you focus for a second? Gale, what happened? Tabby sounded really scared. Oh, right, well... She trailed off the sound of frantic footsteps hammering down the stairs from the upper deck. A moment later, June skidded into view looking harried. Guys, I'm so sorry. Is everyone okay? She's breathing heavily, clearly having sprinted here. The fact that 4 guys were standing here in our keks didn't seem to faze her. June, relax. Everything is fine. Tabby just got scared is all. Oh, I heard the scream. She
She glanced back at the cabin door for a moment. She has nyctophobia.
A collective sigh of realization went up from our group. Given how pitch black it had been, if the lights had suddenly failed, that would explain her panicking.
Rufus, on the other hand, looked confused.
Doctor, what now? I'm sorry, that ain't contagious, is it?
5 pairs of eyes glared at him, a combination of amazement and judgment.
Hey, what's the deal? Did I say something wrong?
Nyctophobia. It means fear of the dark.
Rufus' look of confusion turned to a look of deep regret. Oh, I'm real sorry, Gail. I didn't mean nothing by it.
Don't be silly, Rufus. No offence taken. I appreciate you boys coming to check on us, really. But for now, I really need to be with Tabby. If you could just bear with us, I'm really sorry for alarming you all. Gail, if it helps, we have some battery-powered electric lanterns. Last ages have adjustable brightness. Those could help the lights go out again. Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much, June.
On that note, what exactly happened? Did we have a power cut?
Oh, sorry. Sharif and the captain wanted to test a new sonar equipment, but tripped the light circuit and... Oh, well, you know.
Stefan looked like he was going to say something, but June clapped her hands and interjected.
I'll come by your cabin in about 10 minutes to the lantern, Gale. I just need to update the captain first, so just bear with me a bit, okay? And for the rest of you, I'm really sorry. I'll make sure the captain knows not to retry the test until the power system is prepared, okay?
Rufus and Arran gave nods and grunts of approval, while Stefan seemed to be staring up at something on the ceiling.
June gave a little wave before trotting back the stairs, and disappeared up towards the main decks. Okay, fellas, much as I wish I could enjoy the view a little more, my little sis needs me. But seriously, thank you.
She gave us a grateful smile, a small wave, and slipped back into her cabin, locking the door behind her. And we were left alone. I felt pretty exposed. Arran was very much scanning us with hungry eyes, as though committing the sight to memory. Oh, boys, don't know about you, but I'm bushed. Gonna hit the hay now.
Oh, so soon?
Stefano was still staring at the ceiling. Now I traced his gaze to find what he was so interested in.
Why didn't the emergency lights kick in?
My eyes found what he's so focused on. A light marked with red tape that was not currently lit. Yeah, that's a good question. I ain't an expert. I'm supposed to switch on when the main lights fail.
Exactly, so why didn't they? The engine never stops, the power didn't go completely.
The tension in the air thickens, we each pondered the ramifications. Listen, I'm too tired to ponder this. If you all want to wait till morning, we can bring this up with the captain.
Both Arran and Stefan nodded in agreement. Made a mental note to also have a word with Joseph.
We seemed to have something of a rapport, best I could tell, and as both need be one of the best people to ask about it. Plus, this ship, not good. Just know, this trip is dangerous. Can't say more.
I'm starting to think there's a lot more to that warning. Alright, see you fellas in the morning, okay? Yeah, sure.
Stefan continued to gaze at the emergency light, seemingly lost in thought, while Rufus placed a huge hand on his shoulder and steered him back towards his cabin.
Good night, Garrett.
Night. The lights in my room were still out, at this time because they were still turned off. I stared at my bed, the evening's drama rather killing my sleepiness. Even knowing now why Tabby had screamed, it still sent a shiver up my spine to think about it. Now the question of Sylvia's emergency lights not working left me with a lot of questions. I moved over the bed before slowly clambering back under the duvet, my thin coat of fur not totally protecting me from the chill. I reached out to the switch of the main room lights and flicked them. Even as I plunged back into darkness, my mind was still racing. I reached for my phone to check the time. 2:14. That knot in my stomach was there, sitting heavily as my thoughts raced. Now every tilt and sway of the ship beneath me, every stray noise caught my attention. With a deep breath, I closed my eyes and tried to push the events from my mind. I could deal with this in the morning. For now, I just needed rest. There we go. That was part 1 of Polar Night. I'll put the link to the Patreon down in the description as well. and also the Twitter account.
There we go, so you can see there's definitely more stuff planned for this. Rest assured we'll be continuing on the series when it comes out. And that was quite a long video, and like Garrett, I'm also gasping for a cuppa right now after all that talking. So to quickly wrap up here, thanks as always to all my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. And my top patrons are Dumb Pistachio, Exact, Monolay, Evan King, Marcus, Sindri Dragowolf, Kopi, Spiderling, Grizz, Dissonance, Anubis Silverwind, Ayla Corval, Tiger Cub, Gunnar Muller, Ryan Hall, Bastion, Lark Huskerton, Besuksu, Hopeless Vista, Kartek, and Burnt Toast. And all my patrons are very much appreciated, those you also donate on Ko-fi. So what's coming up soon? Well, at some point next week we will be heading off to Schippersburg, or was it Skippersburg? I need to double check the pronunciation on that one, for Glory Hounds. If you haven't yet read it or seen it, I recommend it. And Dirk the Red Panda did a stream of it a few days ago, so it's worth checking his channel, seeing what's going on with that. There will be a live stream Q&A sometime in the week. I have yet to set a time, but I'll let everyone know when that's going to be. And Fallen Wolf and I are still discussing exactly when to fit in a joint stream. We'll be reading a VN that I certainly haven't done before, and most of it will be new to me, so that will be interesting. I normally read these things ahead of time, so we'll let you know about that one as well, probably on her channel. So definitely go and look up Fallen Wolf and subscribe to her. Well worth it. And also that's where we'll be streaming. So as we go into the subarctic night here, sounds like a good time to say thanks for watching. Bye for now.